Joining me now, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama and Newsmax legal analyst, Jay Town. Jay, what was your reaction when you heard about Bolton's indictment?
Well, I wasn't surprised after the search of his home and his office a few weeks ago. We had heard in the media this week that perhaps it was going to be presented to the District of Maryland grand jury. It was today, and then he was indicted. What surprised me, though, Rick, was the 18 counts. Right, I would have thought, and I think I've even sort of prognosticated that it would be possession of a classified materials count and then maybe a national defense information possession count. It was 18 counts. 10 were possession, 8 were dissemination. And when you read the indictment, and I've only had a chance to read it twice so far, but essentially there was, 16 of the 18 documents that were referred in the indictment were top secret or higher. There was 8 counts of this dissemination, which were all done by AOL email, and it seems like those conversations on email related to his book, and that email account was hacked by the Iranians several years back, and it may have compromised sources and methods, which is an aggregating sort of determiner of whether or not DOJ is going to prosecute.
Well, Jay, what struck me about what I read was that the National Security Advisor, you would think, would be a lot more careful with sensitive documents.
Yeah. They even quote him inside of the indictment referring to another case where they had been using unclassified comms with classified information. He referred to that situation as the original sin. And they put that in the indictment because they have to show that he had knowledge of how to handle classified material. Clearly he does, and clearly there's a lot of evidence of that. But it just really goes to show you how sort of arrogant perhaps John Bolton might have been with the materials in his possession. He's presumed innocent. Maybe this is all a fiction. But boy, when you read that indictment, it does seem like DOJ has a pretty strong case against the former NSA advisor.
Well, and it carries very strict penalties as well. And we all know Bolton was a vocal critic of President Trump. What would you say to people, Jay, who might claim that the raid at Bolton's office and the indictment was some sort of retribution for his comments against the president?
Yeah, I'd remind them that this investigation started under the Obama administration in Merrick Garland's Department of Justice. So it's really hard to draw that straight line from Trump to Bolton when it was Merrick Garland and Joe Biden's DOJ that was actually looking into this initially. I would also point them to the fact that, look, we'll see what happens in court. But if you read the indictment, if those facts are true, there's no fat on those facts. It's not squishy. These emails were going back and forth, apparently sort of recaptured by the CIA in some of their intelligence gathering overseas. That's how it appears. That's how they learned that his email had been hacked, and then found all these, some of these documents are, 71 pages long. They're extraordinarily long. And so I would remind them, look, we all have to be patient. We can't all wish that John Bolton is guilty or not guilty. Let's let the process play out. But indictments sometimes are sparse. This one is not. And like you pointed out, this is a pretty strict liability. These statutes under 793 of the 18 U.S.C. Code are pretty strict. And we don't have to prove intent at all. We just have to prove that it was classified or related to national defense information, and you had them.
Well, if he was caught red-handed, and it sounds like you think he was, and he's found guilty, would he actually do hard time?
I would say he would do a small number of years. I don't know that the 18 counts. It's probably 180 years or something like that. Maybe 90. But it's not even close to that, and it shouldn't be close to that. That is not a just punishment. But we cannot continue to have individuals at the top of government that don't have declassification authority, like former President Trump has. But we can't continue to have them spilling classified information out into to our adversaries, especially information that is, in this case, very highly classified. So That's pretty important factor here, pretty aggravating factor as to what Bolton might be facing.
It sounds like there was a recklessness about all this, but real quick, since I have you here, I want to ask you about Jack Smith. The former special counsel insisted the Biden administration's legal persecution of President Trump was not politically motivated. I want you to hear the president's response.
I think it was the worst weaponization of a political opponent in the history of the world, let alone this country. Deranged Jack Smith, in my opinion, is a criminal. There's never been so much political crime against a political opponent as what I had to go through.
And the investigations against Trump were dropped, and now Smith is being investigated by the U.S. Office of Special Counsel to determine if his pursuit of the president was, in fact, politically motivated. Your thoughts, Jay?
Yeah, I'm done being lectured by lawyers like Tish James and Jim Comey, and especially Jack Smith, about their objection to the weaponization of the justice system when all three of them engaged in exactly that. And don't forget, these cases weren't dismissed, the Jack Smith cases, they were not dismissed because President Trump was elected in last November. They were dismissed because they were gutted by the Supreme Court, the D.C. Court of Appeals, and the district court judges overseeing those cases. They were novel, garbage cases. Everybody knew it. The only reason you would bring it is because of a politically charged agenda. And so Jack Smith doesn't get to, and don't forget, all of his high-profile cases were overturned on appeal. I'm not sure the guy's ever got a conviction on a high-profile case in his career. I spent my adult life in the service to the law. I still, to this day, and I'm a career prosecutor, I've never seen such an embarrassing display as I did with Jack Smith making those comments on foreign soil, talking to Andrew Weissman, an MSNBC contributor, Bob Mueller's bulldog on the special counsel team, who he himself is another one of these who sort of drops a grenade and then falls back into the bushes. Real profiles encourage both of them.
Jay Town, I really appreciate you joining the show on this breaking news. And I'm also glad that you mentioned Tish James. Stay tuned for that, because normally, I start the show with a monologue. We had to push it back to get to the breaking news of John Bolton's indictment. So I'm going to bring it to you, Jay, and the rest of our viewers now. The theme is not law and order, but law and
thank you.
hypocrisy.